Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Go to the church,
Tawali man, what's up?
Man, can you imagine people just dump everywhere? Someone drinks water and throws the bottle wherever.
Come on, Rogers. What else do you expect people to do with an empty bottle?
Simanya now, did you know that plastics take at least 450 years to decompose?
What? That's a long time.
Exactly. Because plastics are made out of a lightweight and flexible material that doesn't decompose easily. And plastics everywhere in the environment cause plastic pollution.
What is plastic pollution now?
It is the accumulation of plastic waste in the environment, like bottles, polythene bags, straws. All of these contribute to plastic pollution.
I have been using them without knowing their effect.
Yeah, a lot of people have. Plastics are a danger to the ecosystem, both on land and in water.
So how can we overcome this problem? Is there something we can do?
Oh yes, we can reduce by minimizing the use of plastics, reuse by repurposing them, or recycle by collecting and processing them into new products.
Everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to change themselves for the world.
How about we change our habits for the world?
And it starts with me and you.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk.
Looking for a pair of shoes? Let's Up Stores has a wide range of selection for unisex footwear. We have the best quality of all brands at pocket-friendly prices, and we make deliveries countrywide. Just place your order or reach us on 0772 08 0090. You can also check up at Let's Up Stores on all our social media platforms. Let's Up, craft your own footprints.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to today's edition of the Hotline. My name is Roger Studiawe, and it's a very great honor yet again to be here with you. Now, I'll begin with apologies, first of all, because we are quite late. For reasons that are beyond our own capacity, we could not begin in time, but also you are seeing me. Most of the times, most of the Mondays, there's another gentleman, Abdallah Tif, who's usually in this seat, and today he's not around because also, again, for some reasons that he could not be here. He had some personal issues that he had to ask me to just represent him for this one day. You'll definitely have him next week. Now, I do not want to waste a lot of time because we are already late. So we're just going to go through a number of things that have really been happening around the country. I'm going to look a little bit, highlighting the state of the national address that the president just gave, I think last week, if I'm not mistaken. Throw some light on some of the issues, how realistic some are, and how better do you think, or do we think, of course with our guests, what is it better that we can do, and what should be the focus if we want to make our country a better place. Now, you don't want to go so long. This is not my day. You have guests who I'm going to invite now to say hello to you, and then we can start right at that. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, and good evening to your viewers. It's always my pleasure being here.
Yes.
I have had an extremely long day. I have come from the extreme end of the east near Elgon and Dry Teso. I was in Bukedia this morning to meet with members of Uganda People's Congress, leaders of Uganda People's Congress there, and other ordinary people. I was delighted. They recruited 3 new members, young members to Uganda People's Congress. But the trip was to engage with and establish the circumstances leading to the failure of the UPC candidate to be nominated for LC5, a chairperson in the by-election due this week. But number 2, the circumstance under which a candidate was beaten so badly, and in those by-elections.
It was a UPC candidate?
No, another independent candidate, apparently NRA leaning. These NRA guys I can't understand. But the information I have now is the person may have been taken out of town for treatment. Why it cannot be taken to Soroti or Mbale hospitals, neither here nor there. But that is one of the reasons why I was there. And when you're coming from such kind of a situation, and then you go into Kampala, then you get a bit of stuck in a Kampala traffic and the UPC, and you know that there was no need for that because you built good roads and you had rail networks. and that industrial area, you don't have to have potholes.
It's deadly.
You reach the stages and you're a little bit tired.
Yeah.
But it's always exciting to be here with our guests tonight, and always very exciting to be here with you. So I am delighted to be here.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to just ask a bit about how that visit was and what were the circumstances now that you said one of your candidates was not able to be nominated.
The UPC candidate was not nominated on day 2 of the nominations. He was picked up by security services, and he spent 2 days in a police cell, of course.
Wow.
And one of those people held the files for the not the candidate, actually. This is one of the agents for one of the supporters of the candidate, who happened to have been holding the files of the nominations, yeah, registered for. So some of those lists, so meaning the candidate remained stranded,
Yeah.
and they couldn't basically do it. So technically, knockout. That's Henry the Bush style. So our candidate wasn't nominated. Fantastic young guy, but as I said, also an NRA leaning person who was apparently independent was not nominated. But that person was worse because he was terribly beaten. I do not see why that should happen in 2023. I do not see why that should happen in the 40th year of NRA rule. And I do not see why that should happen merely for an LC5 by-election. I do not see why that should be a matter of life and death, where people should go to the extremes of wanting to torture candidates who simply want to provide the leadership for a local average district called Bukedia.
Yeah.
So maybe that is how desperate NRA is to hold on to power, or how desperate NRA is to show that they're in charge. Do you know what? Every time I see these things, I think it's absolutely fraught. The young people whom I meet and the young people who are watching this, many of them see these things, they're absolutely not amused. So Mr. Museveni, if I were you, I would be asking very urgently to review your styles.
Is it an issue of, you do mention that that's a level of desperation that NRM has stooped low to. Is it desperation or understanding what the power is and wanting to control it from the local level? Because at the district level is where we have this, I call them the subnational presidents, the RDCs, the people who literally control what happens in the districts. So is it really the at the point of desperation or understanding that power wields from down there and goes all the way up? That's the beginning
No,
of power.
possibly not. I'm just saying desperate in the sense that, you know, Museveni is someone who sort of seems to have psychological issues. I know this country is 1.4 million, apparently, is it 14 million sick mentally.
Yes.
But Mr. Museveni has some issues, and I'm saying that without prejudice, based on public record and based in terms of how he behaved from his childhood and how his big man, Mzee Boniface Byonyima, said, if you're a kind of person who doesn't like to lose an argument, if you're the kind of person who's always envious about people who have what you don't have, if you're the kind of person who is permanently dissatisfied with the little that you have, or even the much that you can have. In fact, look at Mr. Museveni. This guy has ruled this country for so many years. He's not satisfied. I think that's the despair. Therefore, I think the despair I'm talking about here is the madness to prove that you're in charge. You can whip people in Kampala, whip people in Kasese, whip people at the polls. On my way to Kampala, I saw one of the NRA guys in one of those several trucks, and what they do is they try to clear you off the road, and then this guy's cleared and I left them go, and then this guy still comes just pointing to me that you stay man. So what nonsensical power is this? Some funny one man or woman that men. So you're either a coward, or you're trying to prove a nonsensical point about me as a citizen. I've already given you way. But what they're trying to do there is to intimidate Ugandans and make Ugandans feel that they're untouchables. But really what they're trying to do is to show the hollowness and emptiness of this. When I was traveling to the east, I was with a group of young people as I was leaving Kampala to meet with them over quick tea. That's the other day. And we saw these, without prejudice, this is justices of the High Court vehicles. You know, I don't want to prejudice many issues. The justices of the High Court are my good friends. You know, But it must be one of the High Court judges. This guy, almost certainly man perhaps, had two police trucks. The front one had 6 police officers or people in police uniforms. Some of them are obviously Mohose's team. But 6 at the front, then the middle car, plus another 6
At the back.
at the back. Merely 2 escort vehicles. So it's telling you that of the 2 vehicles, there are 12 security people
Yes.
for one person in a Ministry of Justice vehicle.
And most likely even in the car he has someone.
Now, in the car, there is a driver who must almost certainly be trained military person.
Exactly, yes.
In the car is a close bodyguard, personal bodyguard. In the car is the personal assistant.
Personal assistant, yes.
So that means in that car,
About
this
15
person, one
people.
individual, has got a minimum of 15 personnel, Ugandan citizens, who are paid by you. The debt burden for this country in the current proposed NRA budget, which is 52 trillion Uganda shillings,
Yes.
is suggested that 18% of that goes to debt servicing.
Yeah.
I
Not
ask-
paying service.
servicing. So I ask you, young man, if that is debt servicing, what did this money go to do to you, for you? How much of that money, to your viewers, can they explain that, yes, some of the debt, meaning the loans, monies borrowed, came to me to sort out my life, to sort out my children, to sort out my wife or husband, to sort out my family, sort of my community, sort of my health facilities, sort of my transport network, sort of the agricultural thing in my place in Nagongera, sort out my grandfather, sort out our neighbors. No links. But is it any wonder that one person in a Ministry of Justice vehicle, is escorted by 15 people?
personnel,
How much does it cost to basically pay those people per day?
For one person.
For one
as well.
person. How much fuel is used in those 3 vehicles? Ugandans simply wake up. This is how much Museveni has used in this country. So to put that in context, and then I come back, and I see this other one I'm trying to tell you, is that despair or is that cowardice? Somebody in a Ministry of Justice vehicle behaving like that, it must tell you that, is this a thief? Is this a killer? Ministry of Justice should be the most revered
Yeah, exactly.
of all departments, because those are our organized law enforcement. Some of them put on even funny wigs like the Brits. So you decide, our viewers decide. But I hope that young Ugandans begin to ask this very difficult question very urgently. One, to recognize that every time there's a convoy, and by the even as I was joining your studios here this evening, this was now on the military one, I didn't count, but obviously quite escorting one. So we can go on and on, but I'm just trying to say that for one Ugandan whose output we have no clue is giving us those burdens, and you go to a place like Bukedde, where there's an average young man who simply wants to exercise his basic democratic rights to become the chairperson, meaning the lead chief, elected chief of a small district. Bukedde is neither here nor. I know my good sister Anita comes from there.
From there, yes.
So maybe this is what makes Bukedde big. But Anita, you are my sister, man. Let's this place is our place. I've got a Muko down there in Bukedde. But no, there's nothing really massively grand about Bukedde, except the fact that Mukura is near Bukedde, and you've heard about Mukura.
Yeah.
So I am saying, why should you make a by-election a matter in which you whip people, you imprison people? And Mr. Museveni went to the bush. The primary reason was allegedly rigging of elections. So if NRA, as I understand it, they said that they wanted to have only one NRA candidate, is that cowardice or is that despair? I think it's despair in the sense, I'm giving a long response, in the sense that they want to prove that they're powerful. And as I said, Mr. Museveni lost in 1980 and they never came to terms with the loss. So you better go ahead and show that he can win. via the bush. And of course, in the bush, he lost. So DP helped him in 1986, and then they relieved, so he came to power. So now it has to show that it's powerful. But no, UPC leaders and other parents of this country gave this nation that beautiful word for God and my country.
Yes.
This country belongs to all of us, and we also granted it to God. Anybody watching tonight must know that it's absolutely our responsibility to make sure that we don't harm, we don't injure, or we don't cause pain to any average Ugandan citizen, whatever the circumstance, and certainly not through or because of electoral processes. I have been rigged out of elections twice. And for me as Ochieno, I could easily have mobilized street kids to resist. So if in Bokedia you are mistreating Teso boys, whom sometimes when things go back, you ask them to go and eat mangoes, what alternative are you giving them? So the idea that NRA thinks they're invisible is neither here nor there. You can only take people so far. I know it's an element of impunity, but I'm kindly begging them. For UPC, we are kindly begging them. Wake up, come to terms, have some sense of humility. This country is large enough for us. That business in Bukede is no way of running a country, and certainly no way of proving your popularity after 40 years. And these funny guys who push our people in the streets of Kampala is no way of showing heroism at all. It's cowardice.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That has happened across the country. It's not the first time to happen. Even if it happened in Bukede, it has happened in literally all over the country, especially in by-elections, because at the national, maybe you can think there's so much at stake, but this is a by-election for one district, for God's sake. And you feel it's not even an MP, it's a LC5.
Precisely, yeah.
It's LC5, one that the RDC is going to control.
Which becomes worrying because there's a,
if
you don't mind, actually yes. So there's a by-election coming for Oyam North, where the late Engola allegedly also won very NRA style. So now
Engola, the deceased
minister. So where allegedly he won in a very NRA style. So we hope, so you can imagine. So maybe this is a show to people for Yam that, well, you either do the NRA way or you're going to be whipped. But that is cowardice.
Either way, there's a cost to it. But anyway, so you did speak about the Museveni and his whole stories from the 1980s, whether he won or not. Those, of course, stories are different about that. We're not exactly sure, conclusively sure about what exactly.
No. We are sure. I am sure as Ochieno because I was there. I'm sure as UPC because I know. And I'm sure as a Ugandan politician and scholar that Museveni lost 1980 elections, DP lost 1980 elections, UPC won 1980 elections. It is 45 years now. They have failed to prove it. So that's a matter of, it's a scholarly fact. So you don't have to worry about that.
The losing is both ways because we also have your word to take for it. Yours and theirs, they are saying we won. No. They won, not the elections. The elections is true.
I have been challenging them and we challenge them. And if you make an allegation, you make a claim, it's your job to prove it.
Please prove it.
The
elections, that's true.
No.
It has been widely said. I think
so from 1985, when they joined together with the DP, they formed a government for 6 months. They fought amongst themselves. Museveni pushed away the poor DPs and the Okelos. From 1986, he came together with Kagame. Since then until today, they have failed to prove it. So one time Utafiri came on television. I think my good friend Abu Kaputuntu taunted him over it. Then he said, we did not say we went to the bush only because of elections. So no, that is a false one. So we need to stop the nonsense about 1980 general elections. Museveni lost it, UPC won it, Museveni took it the Luweero way. Let's discuss how this Luweero way has bungled the Republic of Uganda. And let's have a consensus on how urgent it is for the youth of this country to build the future on the basis of these facts going forward.
That's true. No, I am not disputing the 1980. That one, I think I've also come to agree to that. Just about the winning of the Bush War, because at one point you also mentioned
that's right.
They almost were losing it, and then they
No, they lost it. They lost. The Bush War, Museveni lost. That's official. NRA by 1984, I think they write books, man. They pretend, these guys, they write very impressive books, allegedly. Oh, we went to Katonga and we did that, and Museveni did, and we caught it. No, it's an absolute lie. Let me tell you one thing. By 1984, NRA was had retreated to Bunyoro. Some of their guys, in fact, by 1985, hundreds of these guys had surrendered to the UN agencies in Congo. You know, Museveni and his fantastic wife were in Sweden basically as refugees. You know,
Yes, yes.
No, these guys had lost the election, but the backup deal was to engage with DP and the Okellos to overthrow the government through shortcut. So 1985 coup was the relief for Museveni and he was the benefactor of it. So that's a fact. He lost the election. I mean, or rather, he lost the war. They lost it.
Now, speaking about all of that, you also know that last week we had a Heroes Day. Was it a Thursday or a Friday?
Yeah.
One of those, we had a Heroes Day. Is it?
You had a what day?
Is it a Heroes Day? Was it last week? I think it was.
Was it Friday?
Or was it the other side? Okay.
The
But
day-
we've recently had the Heroes Day.
Yes.
And I wanted you to paint a picture, especially, I want to hear from you because you are historic. You have been in the previous government. You have been around for the whole.
I was around.
40 years.
I wasn't in the government. I was around, but I was in government.
Hey, okay. But
I'm not that old,
at least-
man. You know, I'm younger than Mr. Museveni.
But at least even then you have had
Oh,
you
no,
have a
yeah.
bit of a perspective from
Yeah,
the other
yeah,
side
yeah,
and what this has been. And I wanted you to paint a picture in a comparison about the whole Heroes Day and the celebration that does happen every once a year. What does that mean to Uganda and what is its relevance exactly? If you could paint that picture for us.
I think that's important, and I think Ugandans need to investigate this together with many others. In a country and a situation in which we are living under austerity, difficult economic situations, I don't know your background beyond journalism, but for average economists, including people who've done decent O-level commerce, will know that for a country to be out of work on one public holiday, you know, is killing productivity for a nation. So a public holiday is a huge loss to the exchequer, a huge loss to the pockets of the nation, to our economy. So to dedicate that, you know, to, as you said, heroes, which I'll answer, and to do so particularly when you know how thrifty Mr. Museveni is, you know, to go ahead and dine and eat people's wines and beers and milk for, you know, and fuel for free, you know, in the name of celebrating heroes, and break some saucepans and turn them into pans, call them meadows, is an absolute waste. No, there was a Heroes Day in the 80s. The Heroes Day was actually celebrated on the 27th of May. That's Nobote 2. And Heroes Day became the date as a result of the day when Milton Obote returned from exile in Tanzania and landed in Bushenyi. I hope you've been to Bushenyi. Bushenyi is a fantastic place.
I have been to Bushenyi.
You know, fantastic place. And it's a fantastic place today, and it will also be a fantastic place for UPC also in the future. But Bushenyi was not celebrating Obote, the UPC president. This was the context. That Heroes Day then would become the day when we recognize people like Ignatius Musazi, among the people who mobilized the Africans in the early 40s and late 40s and early 50s, leading to the formation of Uganda National Congress.
People who shaped Uganda as we
People
know
who
it now.
shaped Uganda's social, cultural, political, and if you like, economic base and foundation. People who led and enabled the foundations for our independence. People possibly who fought around some of the religious and chauvinist intolerance leading to things like Uganda Matters. And people who therefore led us to independence. Those are genuine heroes. They're genuine heroes because, for instance, in 1961 at the Lancaster House Agreement, Lancaster House in London, people have these conversations. I actually give them absolute credit. I give credit to Sir Edward. I give credit to DP. I give credit to Uganda Post Congress led by Milton Obote, and I give credit to all the kingdoms who participated in the Lancaster Lancaster talks, and all territories like Republican places like Maibukedi, Atesu, Lango, and West Nile and others. So all the national leaders who gathered. The reason is, while these people were gathering around the determination to decide that we want independence from this exploitative British, there was giving and taking. To the extent that the rest of Uganda recognized that Buganda was a relatively more, quite clearly, more developed kingdom or mini nation, and that they should, in the new Uganda, have a semi-federal system of government, and showed that, well, these people were willing to give. To an extent, too, Buganda, that never wanted to be independent because they thought they're their own nation state.
Yeah.
Some of those things, neither here nor there, different topic, but I can come back and discuss those.
Yes.
So Buganda, too, to consider and concede that, well, the reality of a united Uganda is here and now, we have to go for it. And particularly recognition that elections do take place in which in Buganda, who are basically monarchists, they're almost like Museveni. They don't, they don't believe in democracy, So for the Kabaka, thanks to UPC, to allow himself to release Buganda to vote directly rather than indirectly through Luchiko was credit. And so that happened. So meaning, therefore, that part of the agreement was that fresh elections takes place in 1962 to cut it short, resolve the outstanding issues of the lost countries between Buganda and Bunyoro. So these are big things. And people who do those things, those are, for me, leaders. And that's a lesson for Ugandans, young Ugandans, that whatever dispute you have, including with your good friends in the studios, producers and girlfriends and future wives and things like that, there is no reason why you can't have a conversation and dialogue and resolve issues, whatever it is. When you reach a stalemate, I also urge some people to walk away. The only thing we're not going to walk away from is Uganda. So any dispute about Uganda, I only have one country. So if somebody has got three, that's fine. So no, as far as resolving Uganda is concerned, we can't move away from it. So anyway, so that was, guys, leading to independence. Then you agree the constitution, agree elections. 1962, agree that we want to get the British out, then agree that we have a titular president. Then Amin comes and takes over power. Our heroes are those people who formed the first camp, in Kibul, in Sudan, to begin to fight Idi Amin. Those are real heroes. Our heroes are people who mobilized and recruited many people. Our heroes are those who died simply because the UPC or were related to Bote or their threat to Amin, because everybody died, including DP, so long as the threat to Amin's creation. Those are our heroes. And our heroes are people who risked to walk from here to Tanzania and to every other places. Our heroes are people who walk from Winkibul to Tanzania. But our heroes are people who walk from Dar es Salaam, like the Paul Mwangas and others, via Katonga to come and take over. Our heroes are David Wito Jok, who was the overall strategic guy under Tito Kello, and many others. Museveni was also a hero. Mr. Museveni was a hero because he walked from Tanzania also, although he went via Toro, busy recruiting for his NRA from NASA thing. But no, generally he made a contribution. So those are our heroes in that sense. So those are heroism. But our heroes are Ugandans who remained behind and suffered under Idi Amin. So Obote, as the overall commander who went and politically led this and militarily also organized and gained support through other leaders, for his return, which was historic, because it was the first time, eventually led to the situation in which you overthrown and then you come back, and then of course by then elections took place. But as of that May, it was a heroic return, and then they used the date to celebrate all these other Ugandans. Heroes Day was definitely not, and is definitely not about celebrating sycophants. Heroes Day is not about celebrating and giving medals to people who whip women in the streets of Kampala. Heroes Day cannot be about people who refuse to go to court, but they go to kill others in the bushes. And Heroes Day surely cannot be about people who loot our millions. Heroes Day cannot be about people who break our schools. Heroes Day cannot be people who are associated with Pineti over our coffee. Heroes Day cannot be about people who kill Obohos, because those people kill Uganda in their thousands. Heroes Day cannot be about people who kill our national railways. Heroes Day cannot be about those people who deny average children from Roshoroza or Shimoni or indeed Chinoni or Nagongera to go to primary school and study, like Museveni had the privilege under UPC and Ochieno to study. It cannot be about that. So the Heroes Day, the NRA way, is actually not Heroes Day. So I don't have anything to associate with that. I reject that Heroes Day, and the future UPC government would review, including the dates of that, because these are neither here nor there. And maybe we might even say that, well, this Heroes Day should be marked, particularly in austerity like this, rather than making them public holidays. And Heroes Day, if it is the case, it should not be days for getting classified money when people are eating dubious sausages in Kololo why are people suffering? And as I said, like the average police officer I met in industrial area, who is a graduate, but she's still a corporal in a private after 9 years, and who's a graduate and she's down there and earns 466,000 shillings a month, and she's got 3 big children. That cannot really be the way to deal with Heroes Day.
Wow. So in your perspective, as the current, as where we stand at the moment, of course now most of it has always been in the direction of the liberation. You know, we have been liberated, as we always call it. We even have a liberation day at that. But the heroes seems to be now painted in the picture of the current rule, the current government. In your perspective, we have nothing absolutely to celebrate in that sense?
Absolutely not, because you talk about liberation. What liberation? Whom did Museveni and his NRA liberate? That is a terminology that I invite Ugandans to go. You can even Google. You don't even need our books that we studied. Nile English course that I will return to the curriculum. And did you hear about Nile English course? And then the books called Ugundipe. Those are the books that trained us in English. It was not to the streets of Kampala, London. No, you know. So you do Google, you realize what liberation is. No, Museveni did not liberate Uganda. Because liberated from what? Museveni liberated himself, his family, and his cronies from poverty, misery, and not knowingness. That's what Museveni did to himself. And to use the word liberation is an insult to Ugandans. So the NRA Day is not a liberation day. In fact, that is another day which is almost criminal to use public money to do so. Because if anything, actually, and this is being very serious, the NRA Victoria thing, if they can call it anything, let them call it NRA thing, not to impose it on Uganda. Because Ugandans didn't join Museveni. They didn't go with Museveni to Luwero, nor did anyone invite him.
Yeah.
Whether the people who were the people
the people in Luwero.
No, the people who, no.
The people he began with.
No. By this, thank you for giving me this opportunity to clarify that.
Yes.
Museveni was not invited in Luwero. So because you're a young man.
No, he wasn't invited.
Museveni was not invited in Luwero. Museveni went. By then, Museveni went and occupied Luwero. Museveni went and imposed himself on Luwero. By the way, read Milton Obote's Notes on Concealment of Genocide in Uganda. Notes on Concealment of Genocide in Uganda. You will read what happened to areas that Museveni controlled in the first 6 months of his occupation of Luwero. It was atrocious. Museveni left Mbarara after losing elections and did not, Nyabushozi, wherever he was.
Yeah, Nyabushozi is for now, I guess.
Yeah. But he didn't go to Mbarara court. He didn't go to come to Kampala court like I've come to Kampala court. He went to Luwero. Now, he went to unarmed people. Granted, the people in Luwero, were Baganda who did not like UPC. But there is no evidence that the people in Luwero had organized to fight against UPC. So this is very important.
I've not seen that evidence.
No. To the extent that actually the people in Ankole are fantastic people. My people, especially you guys from Bushenyi, fantastic people. The people in Ankole, just as they had rejected Museveni, they had also not told Museveni, you come and we organize and we support you. They didn't. So this guy did this thing. So you're armed and mobilized these people. It's no surprise that he was taking some of these children whom we called Kadogo. Some of them were people who are kidnapped children by force. So when you're a gunman, you do this kind of thing and you take over a political area, people get indoctrinated and they follow you. That is how NRA did. So to call that liberation, I think that's an insult to English language.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much for the history. I think it does make sense because most of the times you have read things and it's always take or leave. So there's nothing better to compare,
and
compare it with.
Indeed, and you're absolutely right, because I'm also encouraging young people to be critical thinkers, including everything Ochieno says. You guys follow me on Twitter and Facebook and things like that. But Google, look through what I've written. If you have challenging stuff, send me a mail on Facebook, send me a mail on Twitter, check with the fantastic presenters here. They give you my WhatsApp, direct number, talk to me, I'll sit up with you. and show you. So don't take anything and everything I say by virtue of what I'm saying as gospel truth. The only good thing is that Obote taught me some very good bad manners. And that is our job, is to tell the truth. So at least I can guarantee, as far as Ochieno is concerned, there's nothing I say that I cannot back or back up. But generally, for you young guys, it's important that you counter check. But also it's important to read wider and more, because we want a country which is going to be better, richer, and genuinely much liberated post Museveni for the future.
Okay, thank you so much. And for us, we are blessed because then we get to get the knowledge from the first hand. Because we have a number of people, just a handful of them, who actually know the history from where we were to where we are, and maybe can project where we're going. So it's a very great honor, yes, to have you today. Now, I want us to move away from the Heroes Day, because it seems it does have the relevance. Only what is different now is that it has been distorted to mean a particular thing or to celebrate particular individuals, not exactly what it should be for the historical purpose that it was made.
I think that's an important point. Yes, you're right. That we are not disputing the principle of it. But at the moment, the so-called heroes who are being celebrated
And
are
not
really
the
not
deserving
heroes.
ones.
And actually, Museveni is trying to build a narrative about their greatness and heroism, which is neither here nor there.
All right, thank you so much. Now we're going to move a bit into his speech, the State of the Nation address. And I do have it, but just to go into the highlight, most of it, and what he actually did begin with is the economy and how we are doing. And I wanted to sort of get it off from him and how he said it. I want to read just a bit of a paragraph from his speech, how he started. The first point was performance of the economy, and the point was economic growth. And he said, as a result of the NRM government deliberate efforts to expand the economic base of the country, a strong foundation has been built for rapid economic growth and socio-economic transformation. In 1986, when the NRM government took administration of the country, the size of our economy was equivalent to US dollars 1.5 billion. Today, our economy is about US dollars 49.4 billion. In other words, the economy has expanded by more than 30 times since 1986. Now, those are the 40 years that you have been talking about. They have been, steering us. And as you were, you might have been young by the time, but you sort of had a glimpse
I was young and sharp enough, you can imagine. Trust UPC.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you must have had a glimpse of what the previous government had been like and what the strides they had made. I want you to just make a comparison or make sense of that statement to say that what we have now, the economy-wise, has grown 30 times what was there, and if that is there to what is there to show if there has been growth, or what is it if you have digressed and gone back instead?
I'm going to be very generous to the program and say this one, that lest you forget, is Obote who also ever said, and it's official, that Museveni is a guy who tells the truth only by accident. So in the unlikely event that that does not apply to the statement, 30 times growth
Yes.
in 40 years, Museveni wants us to clap. He's talking about economic and social transformation. Yeah? Check out the number of youth unemployment. Check on the number of graduate unemployment.
But that is global. It's not unique to Uganda alone.
Don't get trapped into, because I think you read NRA propagandists too much.
No, I don't.
So every other time they default to global. No, I am also wise enough to know what is global and what is not. And I'm lucky that I've actually very substantially traveled and very widely read.
Okay.
No. If you want to pick a global comparison, pick a global country, and we compare. So to proceed, 30 times, yeah?
Yes.
What's the unemployment rate? What did Museveni find in 1986? And by the way, what Museveni found in 1986 is extremely misleading. What needs to be compared with Museveni is what he and Titu Kelo and Basilius found in July 1985. Because the 6 months administration of UNLA, which Museveni puts himself as, you see, like even when our people die in Somalia, he blames commanders. He doesn't take responsibility. So that's a problem with Museveni. So the 1985 coup, Museveni was a party to it. So the 6-month confusion in UNLA was part of their confusion. So he attributes that to UNLA and those terrible Kelos, the poor Mucholis, those poor guys. But no, it was their thing. So what was the state of the economy as of July 1985? I'll tell you. Between 1981 January, when Obote effectively took over government and the full cabinet, we drew up a 10-year development, in fact, development program, which includes rehabilitation program. Starting with equipping and stocking sectors of the economy and the communities that had been emptied by Idi Amin, including appointing a minister for supplies. Some NRA guys, when you say minister for supplies, they laugh, But this is a very visionary thing, and check what they did. And then you have minister for rehabilitation, I said Patrick, So you see, so this is the UPC way, contextualized under Museveni. 81, 82, 83. By 1984, there had been sufficient turnaround in Uganda's economy, and which meant there was the first time the standard of living of the people of Uganda rose for the first time in 1984. Within that 4 years, first time since 1970, meaning the year before Amin took over. Our economic OECD figures, or OECD, which are the global economic power thinkers, came to Kampala and praised us. We had proposed UPE, Universal Primary Education. Remember, this was our program of the 60s.
Yes.
And in the 80s, we wanted it to start in 1991. We believed we could afford to do it in 10 years. I'm talking those funny figures of Museveni and growth. Absolutely artificial. We had envisaged, and we're going to achieve, a capacity to have universal primary education within 10 years, quality by 1991, over 10 years. OECD partners said, oh no, you guys, you can afford to do this thing by 1986. Obote, our president, said no. Obote told me at his living room in, actually balcony in Lusaka, that Joe, I refused because I wanted to stick to our 10-year program. Because, we opened up what they call third world schools. I'm sure you must have had one in your county district. I don't know which is your home district.
Chankwanzi.
Chankwanzi. So in Chankwanzi, I know Chankwanzi is now hosting propaganda units. But somewhere in Chankwanzi, there must have been, every district had, and almost every constituency.
It was Chivoga then?
Yes. Had a secondary school started, The idea was that we had so-called third world secondary schools, teacher training colleges, technical schools, national teacher training colleges, and opening up for universities like University of Science and Technology in Bararam, part of our initiative, then which was supposed to be University for the East and the North. The idea was that qualitatively over a period of time, our economy was going to be turned around in such a manner that we were able to go to have enough schools, enough teachers, enough scholastic materials, enough equipment, and enough money to pay salaries without compromising quality of education. And what I said, on our projection, not those funny people, on our projection, I wanted to stick to our program. Fast forward, what I'm trying to tell you. In my own then constituency, you may not know this, but you can check it. There was a Nagongara National Teachers Training College, opened, government. It's now part of Bosetama University. There was Mahanga Secondary School. There was Kirao Secondary School. There's Paya Secondary School. There's Barinyanga Technical School. And then there's Mulanda Teacher Training School, which ended, I think, over land dispute. So 5 major educational institutions opened within 4 years. These institutions were supposed to be built fully to the level of Nabesunsa, Nabingo, Torugas, and others within the 10-year program. That is how you feel what economic and social thing is happening in the state. Remember, in 8 years, in about one, we managed to build those so-called 22 to 24 hospitals. Economic projections, if there's an economist who's able to map on 70 figures, on today's projection, there should be about 140 hospitals. Museveni has not even succeeded in one, let alone the miseries of Lubawa, where somebody needs to be in Luzira. Okay?
Yes.
Now, I met a group of young people the other day. I meet quite a lot of them. Please do come. I chat with them. I try to guide and teach some good manners, and also try and hope generally wake them up. And I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I try my level best. And I was meeting a group of young people, and one was absolutely shocked about these things about schooling, public schooling. I was trying to tell you. But one did not know that university education was free. One did not know that post-senior 5, so education after senior 4 was free. Only education that was being paid for before Museveni was primary and O-level, paid for but subsidized. The subsidy by government was completely high class, and that's why education in Uganda we're the darling of East Africa. This is the context.
Yes.
Now, jobs. You leave university, you go into a job. In fact, before you leave university, you do what they call public service interviews. You don't have to know somebody, like in these days in NRA, if you don't know anybody, then you can
It's tough for you.
And maybe you need to go to a Twine's church, so that maybe a miracle can happen, and then you get an appointment, even if it's a junior doctor, So all these are absorbed at the time. But what they didn't know, and this was being told, including today, I was getting talking to a number of young people before I went for my second meeting, that you get paid to study at university, you get paid transport to and fro, called TA. All that government was doing. That tells you what government money was trying to do. Now, finally, most importantly, Mr. Museveni, after finishing Dar es Salaam University, thanks to UPC, Mr. Museveni's parents, and this is official, they could not have taken Museveni to Ntare School, afforded Ntare School and Barai School, and taking him to Dar es Salaam University and back. They could definitely not have done so. I don't know their details, but I'm reasonably confident, let them prove otherwise. But that was a privilege of the Uganda People's Congress. After that, Museveni came. Museveni did not know Bote. The person who employed Mr. Museveni, I'm saying this for the record, is Mr. Wilson Okwenje, not a northerner, as the Northi, but in Musamia, who was the head of research in the president's office, employed Museveni. Why? All graduates got jobs, and you got interviewed on merit. So Museveni got a job on merit. Nobody needed to know him, and went to work in the economics unit, president's office. That's impossible today. Now, whenever I raise these issues, that's why I'm saying you gave me a very good point. NRA guys, these NRA guys, I don't know what economics they study in Chankwas. Not your Chankwas, your home, but I'm saying that place which we also need to investigate.
The leadership.
So they'll say, no, the population has grown. Haven't you heard that?
Yes.
Then the population has grown, so we can't create those jobs.
It cannot be the same as it was.
We cannot create those jobs, and we cannot afford that. But if you're boasting that thing, so Mr. Museveni have got you today. The economy has grown by 30%. Why isn't university education free and taught? Why isn't post-secondary school free and taught? Why is so-called UPE is educational apartheid? Why are children, including Luwero, that gave their lives for you? 300 children the other day in Panga. Is it in Panga? The NUP leader in the house, went to a classroom full of 300 children, sitting on the floor in a building built by UPC in Luwero. Mr. Museveni, 30 times my foot. That's an absolute economic nonsense. So it tells you that those figures are either fake, or if so, this is the time when you can't trust statistics. Statistics tells you that Sudir plus some very good connected guys have trillions in their pockets, and the majority of Ugandans can hardly afford to feed themselves today. It's an absolute nonsense. It's almost criminal, I can tell you that.
With that now, of course now it means, like you said, I think it's just time for us to not trust statistics. But he also said that the economic growth is projected at 5.5% compared to 4.7% last financial year. with the projection that you just gave us about how we were and what is said to have been achieved in these 40 years, that you said does not exactly reflect in the pockets of Ugandans, of course, because the growth of the economy should also reflect in the people themselves.
Precisely.
They need to grow along with it. So if that does not reflect, is it feasible that we're going to grow that much in the next financial year, as opposed to
In principle, from
in
an
comparison with all of the
Indeed.
general perspective?
No, in principle, from an economic perspective, I would say that is possible. So natural growth is possible. And by the way, the state of Uganda's growth in certain aspects, particularly in agricultural productivity, is not necessarily something that you'll give credit to NRA or anybody else. You know, some of our mineral sectors, this is basically our wealth gifted by God. You know, once the UPC granted this country to God, God blessed us completely, except we keep on abusing this country, and we abuse God, and we abuse the citizens of this country. So, and you know, a projection, particularly post-COVID, whether or not that is the figure, there's no reason why it cannot relatively be better. There's no, and I have no reasons to challenge that in figure. But again, as I said, in qualitative terms, yeah, how much have wages grown in the 30 years' times? How much has inflation grown? How much has the cost of living grown?
He did say, though, that there's some sort of inflation has reduced.
Yeah, but I'm just giving, if it's reduced, this is the more reason why, which makes my point. So how much, you know, was a primary teacher earning in, Mr. Museveni in trouble. So in January 1986, how much was a primary teacher earning, and what was the purchasing power? How much money is that today? By the way, do you know that Mr. Museveni, they literally thieved Ugandans of currency conversion in 1987. You heard that story, yeah? This guy is boasting, man. So they killed 2 zeros. You have 100,000 Uganda shillings at a time. They killed 2 zeros. What is that?
That would be 100.
You remember 7,000 shillings.
Yeah.
And then the cut of 30%. That money has never been accounted for. So that was the money. So if you look at Uganda's 100,000 shillings today, yeah, add 2 zeros, yeah, and then multiply the projection by 30%, and you see how crude economics, how much NRA has ripped off this country. Museveni's NRA in terms of hopes and possibilities. Beyond that, it's extremely important. 1986, health services was free. Education was free. Transport, by and large, was relatively free. Agriculture was free because the agricultural extension service was there. My father's son, godson, who ended up being my muko, you know, he kept on coming from home for tea, but he was, you know, eyeing my sister, you know. So he's an agricultural officer. So these are the guys who then, at sub-county levels, supported farmers. Organized system under UP's administration. No wonder the cooperatives were powerful. No wonder we got genuine, decent stuff for agriculture. In Chankwons, I'm sure you know about cattle dips you know, across this country. And then, you know, of course, in Chankwons, maybe you're going to be able to find. You heard about John Babiha, our Minister of Agriculture, who revolutionized agriculture, you know, for cattle dips, for all this kind of stuff. Where is it under NRA? Where is it? So as I said, economy has allegedly grown like that. Uganda Commercial Bank, the People's Bank, you know, equivalent of Kenya Commercial Bank, the ones who are boasting here in Kampala Street, you know. You know, branches across the country more than Stanbic, killed NRA. Yeah, Uganda Commercial Bank. The Cooperative Bank, I think, killed. Uganda Development Corporation, killed. I don't know which other industries, killed. But guess what? Uganda Airlines, killed. Uganda Railways, killed. Uganda Hotels, killed. You want me to go
the cooperative
on
societies.
and on and cooperative killed. I was in Bali, you know, last evening, and people still cry about the cooperative movements and the struggles of their coffee. Or there, the Bugisho Cooperative Union has survived as part of that.
We're talking to Nandale Mafavi, I think he's the chairman, if I'm not mistaken.
Precisely.
But even when they have survived, it's not that easy. It's not, because they're fighting against giants that are state-armed and you know, that are sponsored, that are supported, that have the capacity. And it's just a society that is one standing against all of that. Even when they have survived, I don't think they are doing quite well as they should.
Absolutely not. And I'll tell you another story. I met a young, extremely beautiful girl from Tororo. Absolutely beautiful, decent girl, working in fantastic, providing fantastic customer service in a hospitality company. But she happens to stay in a place called Namatala. Have you been to the east? Have you been to Mbale?
No, not to Bali.
Yeah, I'll take you to Mbale, and then you come to my home in tour for a weekend. And that's a promise, okay?
Thank you.
So in Namatala was where the equivalent Nighty. You've heard about Nighty?
I've heard about 90
You know? So there was African Textile Mill in Bali, you know. So that was the factory that did Valley Edition. And so our cotton sorted out, there was a spinning mill in a cotton mill in Nagongera, my place. It's now a police station where they whip people, I don't know. You know, so you get the oil from this cotton stuff, and then after that you spin these other things. Then you take them to Jinja and Ombale, and you produce this kind of clothes. You know, my shirt is nice, just like yours. Yours is fine, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's fantastic. You're a smart guy, by the way.
Thank
You know,
you.
so these things produced like that, quality stuff sold, and this is how these monies came to our national coffers. I asked this girl today, ATM. She said, what? She was not thinking about ATM machine. She had no clue. Now, her manager is a Sabine, another beautiful Sabine lady who's done a bachelor's degree, but she's now working as a supervisor in a bar, you know? But at least that one had heard about this ATM. This is the economics conversation of the funny figures of Mr. Museveni.
Yes.
I hope it makes sense to you.
It does make sense.
So unless it's that, it's neither here nor there. Then finally, the average person employed today, how much do they earn? The average teacher, what can they do with their salaries? The average nurse, what can they do with the salary? I told you that the average police officer whom I met,
It's a
who earns
400,000.
what do they do with the money? So unless that is added together, and by the way, they don't get housing, they don't get accommodation anymore. Go to any police station. By the way, these NRA guys, man, they're very lucky because for us, we're very forgiving people and very tolerant people, and we must continue being that way. So if you go to every police station, you see the mess in which police officers live. You think they're Mabati thieves. But these are serving police officers.
Yeah.
You go to the army barracks,
Very true.
you see the conditions of our men and women in uniform.
as-
It's extraordinary.
Just a bit about that. As coming from somewhere deep over the weekend, and we passed next to a barracks, an army barracks. Very big. It was very big, but I do not remember at any one point seeing some sort of a structure. It was, you know,
just
this.
physical, this-
I hope these are the ones they
tents,
call
yeah.
the Mama Ingia Poli. The grass thatched, very
yeah.
small, muddy, of course, muddy, grass thatched, like our Bahima tradition.
yes.
Where we used to live back in the day.
Yes.
So that is how it has been actually, and that's how it is.
Today.
So someone is paid 400,000, they live in something like that. So remote services are not even there. So I ask myself, how do these people live? We had one person who was saying, I loved the army, but I cannot do that. I cannot be there. So I think I renounced now my interest in being in the uniform at one point in my life. And so that also reflects in how this shows Ugandans what is it that they are getting from what they are putting in. But also to move away from that.
No, but just one small thing here. You know, you strike me. And when we talk some of these things, for me, because I lead UPC, and because I'm UPC, and because I'm absolutely anti-NRA, not for anything, but for their track record and what they represent. Yeah? When I talk, these people might think about partisan. No. What you tell me, for me, I do Jesus. I just don't know how an average Ugandan citizen should be treated the way you talk about it. So actually it hurts, Mr. Museveni. This thing hurts. And you boast, you professionalize the army. You boast, you've got trillions of shillings in your pocket. These guys are extremely selfish. It's almost criminal. So really, soldiers should not live in those conditions. Police officers should not live, not anybody else, and particularly if they're soldiers who are people, yeah, whom we train to protect our borders, you know, or police officers whom we train to give us guarantees in terms of law and order. I know sometimes once in a while they whip wrong people. But no, on a serious note, they can't. So maybe no wonder sometimes some of these guys go out of their way and they're rather rude. And like I talked about Mr. Museveni's jealousness that make him grow the angry man, you know, maybe some of these other people, You know, they go along Parliament Avenue, they see this beautiful MP walking like this, and they say, so they say, let me go and whip her. Because they know they're coming to the traumatic situation they're coming from. So I think as a country, we need to have this conversation. And I appreciate you bring that context. And let me just tell this to Ugandans. In the very event that there is a UPC government, and there will be, in a time when I still have sufficient energy, and even better, that I'm a UPC president, therefore president of this country, I can tell you, we will transform the livelihood of all public servant workers, including the police and army. And guess what? It's not a joke. Because look at Rubongi Barracks, look at some of these uniports, including the Metro uniports. They were down there during, most of these things were last there during UPC administration. So is somebody using Ugandans as soldiers, somebody using Ugandans as police officers, somebody using Ugandans as interns?
I want to get back to you about that, what you will make, but that will be on the concluding side. So time is really running against us, but I want us to get just a highlight, because the government has had a lot of, all of these programs trying to take people out of poverty, change and improve the livelihoods of Ugandans. And now having the perspective of how the economy is doing, now, of course, weighing the numbers that are being said as having achieved and that which is a reality from what you say, do you think these initiatives do or will prove useful in the long run to moving people from poverty to sustainable livelihoods?
They will not.
Sure the economy is
no, they will not. They will not. I want to disappoint you.
Because he did mention about a number of things, sorry a bit.
Yeah, sure.
The number of things he did highlight as some of those that are contributing to the growth of the economy. He did talk about the PDM, he talks about the agriculture, how it is doing, he talks about security and how it's standing, and of course governance and all of that. And saying that the inflation is stabilizing, the economy and commodity prices have reduced, all of that. He attributes all of that to the economic growth. So that is why I was asking to understand, do you think these initiatives that are being brought about by the government can actually deliver us to a sustainable livelihoods as far as economics is concerned?
My answer is still no. And I was going to ask you, do you know how many programs NRA has put in place? Forget about their 10-point nonsense program. Do you know how many Myoga to Bona or whatever, do you know how many?
No, not exactly.
There are very many.
I know a number of
there are
them,
more
yes.
than 5.
Yes, they are. Certainly.
Has any of them succeeded? Z. Why would PDM succeed? Why would it? It's not going to succeed. What this country needs is a change of government. Mr. Museveni is a tired man after 40 years. After all, he boasted that he's been fighting for you guys in 50 years. Not for me. Mr. Museveni, not for me. I reject that. So he's been fighting at least for 50, 60, whatever. So he's a tired man. Mr. Museveni needs to rest. Even if there is a new leader from NRA, that comes with some kind of new perspective. That's what change is all about. But generally, this country has had enough of NRA and their experiments for 40 years. Don't forget, Mr. Museveni claimed he was a Marxist. Did you hear that story somewhere?
Yeah, he did, yes.
And then he came and went full swing communist. And then he went and started selling our coffee in exchange for arms and our was it tea, whatever else in exchange for oil. So he did something with Gaddafi and then did something with Cuba, basically killing our economy. So that failed. Then from there he went zigzag tip. Then he became now the market force expert for neoliberal agenda, Anglo-American, Bretton Woods institutions. Sell everything that UPC built and sell everything that belongs to the people of Uganda and then make profit. So you realize as a result of that, education has been privatized, health has been privatized, every aspect of our life has been privatized. The only one thing that has sort of survived is UPC's National Waters and Sewerage Corporation. Everything else has been sold. So very soon, even the air you breathe in Kampala, you'll be negotiating. Already we are paying for it because Kampala is the most polluted capital city on the African continent. Did you know that?
Not
Kampala is the most polluted capital city on the African continent. Kampala is the second most polluted city in Africa. Meaning, therefore, the asthmas that you pay for, the heart problems that you pay for, the high blood pressures that you pay for, The difficulties in giving birth that you pay for, some of those dubious mood swings, some of the cancers that I can go on and on and on. So NRA is a net liability to this country. Mr. Museveni and his NRA basically just need to rest, particularly if the UPC government, no revenge. Mr. Museveni, I will always invite you for tea in Agongera, and I will even come and see you how you're doing and playing around with your grandchildren. You teach me how you do bujera, you know. Mr. Museveni, you need to retire. Meaning somebody needs to come with a fresh set of ideas. One. Two, a political party with sets of values, sets of ideas, need to come with to test inflation, to test law and order, to test defense, to test agriculture, to test economic growth, to test youth unemployment, to test global unemployment, to test what to do with the ICT and industrialization, to test a particular position on climate change, and to test transportation and infrastructure. New, fresh, grand ideas also to try. After all, you try it for 5 years, and if citizens feel it's not going the right way, they deselect you, they unvote you. That is how nations develop. The Museveni was talking about instability in Britain in the Conservative Party. But that's democracy. That a leader is elected, they make a disastrous mistake, but even their party members are saying, no, you're not doing as we promise you do for us.
Yes.
We don't think you're serving our country, you're serving our interests. No,
yes.
Move aside. That is the democracy that we need in this country. So genuinely after 40 years, Ugandans need to mobilize, wake up, come together. Leadership need to emerge. And also my challenge to opposition is this, that while actually therefore we're having this conversation, for us with UPC, we're very lucky, as you can see. We are very ready.
Yes.
Oh, we are very ready to govern this country. UPC, oh, you put it on the table. Fiscal policy,
we'll check that
education, taxation, yeah?
We'll put that to a test in due time.
So no, we are ready to do that. So beyond that, in answering in a long way, there is nothing that NRA at the moment can do to turn around the livelihood of our people. Why? Because for the last 40 years, it has been purely experiment. 20 years of those experimenting monolithic so-called movement political system. So I used to write those days, I had a column in the New African magazine. You know New African magazine? Yeah. Yes. You know, I had a column there.
No,
my column was called Art of Africa. Fantastic. You know, so, yes. So, no, Museveni, poor Uganda, you know. It has been a laboratory for IMF, laboratory for World Bank, laboratory for the Anglo-America, laboratory for people who want gold, laboratory who want to find shortcuts to oil, laboratory who want to try and experiment to do hospitals and get away with our gold and money, laboratory for everything, laboratory including for how to test, you know, their weapons and how to test how their vehicles can swab around the streets of Kampala in potholes. We even now possibilities, since Mr. Muhoozi has also decided that he knows how to do road networks, we might even have, you know, roads paved by cow dung, who knows?
Okay. Now, before we move away from this whole economy thing, we have a budget reading that is about to come up. I wanted to get your perspective on what you think should be the priority areas. Because I understand now you have, as the UPC, literally your government in waiting. Yeah. Because every other opposition party is a government in waiting.
I don't know about others, but we're a government in waiting. And we're definitely government in waiting in terms of the challenges facing this country, where this country is coming from, where it is at the moment, where it should go, and what we would do, and what it takes, and what we would like to see it happen. Okay. And how, very sadly, you know, we need what we need to do in order to cleanse the mess, especially to pull off the beauties that we built for you guys, that you allowed Museveni and Kagame and others to break down. But how to sort out all those ones? Yeah, we've got an idea.
Please, so paint us a picture of what should be the ideals in this coming budget. What should be the priorities? You may not necessarily break down how much should go where, but what should be the priority and probably for what reason? So maybe it gives us an idea.
Oh yes, one thing is the number one pot of money should not be going on debt servicing, you know, that we don't know. But maybe that's neither here nor there. And by the way, I campaigned. Did you hear about what they call Jubilee 2000 debt campaign in the 2000s? Well, then you're still in high school.
I didn't read much about it.
So I was part of this global campaign for debt relief to African part of what I call it. They don't even call it debt relief. I say that those days was those funny institutions giving the irresponsible lenders giving money to illegitimate borrowers. At the time, people like Museveni were illegitimate. It still is illegitimate anyway. But definitely at the time, coming from the bush, you take power by force, and then you still go and borrow in the name of Ugandans. And we were right. We don't know what they did with the money. They liberated their pockets and families and whatever. But neither here nor here. So anyway, a clear budgetary projection would, the number one should not be defense. It should not be president's office, and certainly should not be defense and president's office, which at the moment is the biggest consumer of a national national work.
The State House budget was actually increased in this one, if I'm not
Shamefully.
mistaken. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, shamefully.
It was increased from the previous one.
By the Ugandans. Do you know what happened in Zambia? The Zambian president is a businessman, very successful businessman. But the guy said no. He told his ministers, austerity for everybody. There's no reason why you're swimming in those cars that sweep oil like nothing, fuel like nothing, and the country is suffering. So you're a minister, many of you already members of parliament, so people, you're elites. So if you want a Porsche car, go and buy it yourself.
It's not going to come from the government.
No. So my opinion would be efficiency savings, also amongst those things. I'm playing around with the figures, not in order.
Yes, that's okay.
So efficiency savings means, therefore, that we should trim down spends in Parliament. My sister Anita's office has a budget more than enough to have looked after the entire UPC to Parliament. Our speaker, the last speaker, had one car, just like any other average minister, a driver and a police escort, bodyguard. So there are three in the car, average car. Our last speaker, and that's what I call Mr. Speaker, Francis Putajira, fantastic guy. Yeah? Our prime minister had one car. Occasionally, in particular function, he had an extra car. But he apparently had a second car to support him, but that was the thing. That's all I could see. The only people with the convoys were the president and vice president. President's convoy one time met me in Akasha. I was being cheeky on an evening about 7 o'clock, and they were in two Mercedes-Benz cars. Front one secured and himself, suited. No police outriders, going home. He's home in Cologne, just before 7 o'clock. That's 1985. Museveni was in Luwero. The Ukelos were planning.
And he was able to move around like that.
And he was doing that. And I mean, that's what he was doing. Number two, I lived at my cousins off Akasha Avenue. So every morning, particularly Mwanga's convoy, Mwanga's vehicle used to go, his police outriders, 3 police outriders, 3 cars. He was the vice president of UPC, vice president of the Republic. I call him the last vice president. Do you know who the vice president is today? With power. And also Minister for Defense, Paul Mwanga. And consider yourself, these funny guys in the bush had claimed that he was a election rigger. So you could say maybe he would even be slightly much more concerned about his security.
Yeah.
And former chairman of the military commission. So actually should come with added security. 0. So these are huge wastes. So I'd cut down those wastes, and you realize that huge savings would be of that.
Yes.
But anyway, the priority should be naturally education for UPC. Priority should be health for UPC. Priority should be agriculture for UPC. Priority should be investments in very specifically coordinated investments in the environment and climate change. And that you could do by being smart around. I'm not giving them some of my UPC ideas. NRA guys always buy our ideas for nothing.
But we need them to have them implemented.
No, fine. Well, we know many UPC programs that Museveni tries, but it's like a borrowed shirt. You see my beautiful shirt, just like your beautiful shirt. If anybody, because both of our shirts are okay, aren't they? So anybody tries to borrow them, they always look crooked in them, don't they? There will be innovative ways in which you can support agriculture and link it with the environment.
Yeah.
So tree planting and all this kind of stuff. But anyway, so those would be the key areas. But the natural big thing is infrastructure, where there's still a lot of our money. You know, these days they say they're threatening Kampala streets with cow dung, you know, for smartening up. No, the infrastructure thing has got a huge deficit. Africa, as I said, since I do a global commentary on many of these things, I know that Africa has got a huge infrastructure deficit. The projection is about 95 billion. Maybe right now we could say Africa do about 100 billion US dollars investment per year on infrastructure generally. In Uganda, where NRA has sunk it, where Kenya has got trains that we had before, but they've killed it. I would put emphasis when you talk infrastructure is not a road to Kisozi only, you know. Nagongera Road was supposed to have been done in 1989. The whole of Tororo district, the Tororo district as it stands today, there's not a single kilometer of tarmac. Are you sympathizing with me? Since NRA came to power, the whole of Tororo district does not have a single new road of kilometer of new road, nothing. Instead, Nagongera, my beautiful small town, is now a bit of a struggling. Yeah? There was a 1 mile of a tarmac, it's gone. From Rubonge Barracks, which you'll go and show you in Tororo, up to the town.
I've been to Tororo.
The tarmac has gone into town. It has retreated. So we have a tarmac deficit for Tororo district. So it's not only road infrastructure is about roads, rail networks, air transportations, water and sea and waterways. Infrastructure also means physical buildings. So in others, spaces for education, schools and hospitals. But you can now link that because in a way, because actually, when you say health, this is it. Infrastructure should be able to be embedded in many of those things. Those are areas where I would want to see a lot more money. But perhaps we would possibly invest some money in mental health, considering that now people are misusing arms, and many times we don't know whether there's mental health issues. I know sometimes people politicize these things, but maybe we just basically need to be able to look at underlying circumstances. But most importantly, I think Anita sometimes can be very. And Anita went to school with a very close friend of mine, who were very close friends, and not Anita, Atrine, Dr. Diana, you know, Atrine. They should stop being a bit arrogant. You know, they should find money for medical interns. They should find money for more doctors to train. They should grant incentives for workers. There should be a minimum ceiling. UPC, we pushed for minimum wage. Right now, as a UPC government, in future, we're pushing for what we call living wage, so that the monies that you earn is enough to live on and things like that. These are monies that should be cushioned. I would invest in some of those areas, and in that you'll be investing in human capital. Beyond that, of course, you look at ICT. The other day I was doing an interview for a global television network, and every now and again power cuts off, and they say one of them is either power. In many cases, it is it's the strength of the networks. So all those are things that government should be able to make sure that the MTNs, the Airtels, and all these telecommunications companies are not only equipped, but they're beefed. Some of that can be through tax negotiations, discounts, or remedies, or incentives, or in many cases through rigorous regulation. In the UPC government, you come here and you're a funny company for telecommunications. You know, you'll take your profit, but you'll also have your work cut out. You'll make sure that whether you like it or not, you take electricity to Kotido. Make sure that all the sub-countries in Nagongera have got electricity, so you don't, and make sure that there is anybody, you know, who wants access to internet in Chankwanzi, get it. So you take the services down there. At the moment, because these are private companies, understandably they will go for where they've got most customers and where, of course, they will make the maximum amount of money. It's a responsibility of government to be that tough. Check what my good brother Kagame is doing in Rwanda. I don't agree with him on many issues. I didn't agree with him on many issues in Uganda. Some of them he told like lies, just like the M7'S did. And but the guy has turned the country and turning the country in one in which I think, by and large, you know, some of the guys don't. Most Banyarwanda would be proud to feel one. I want Mr. Museveni to show that really, really, really everything he does for God and my country. I really want to feel.
Right. And now that is going to conclude the discussion about the economy and where we stand with that. We'll certainly come back, ask about when the budget is read and we know how the money has been spent and split here and there. We'll try to assess what the priorities are like and what should we expect then for the next financial year. But then now I want us to go a little bit into the opposition boycotts. Now you know that when there was a State of a Nation address, the opposition people said, boycotted, just plain, outright. They said they don't want to be a part of that, apparently. I don't know if it's just because they don't agree with what the president would say, or they just don't think it's worth it to be there. But they also said they will certainly boycott the reading of the next budget. I do not know, and that has happened before, of course. I do not know if that does make any significant improvement as far as their job is concerned to make this country better, or if their non-appearance in those spaces does add anything to their constituencies and the people they represent. What does that mean?
Politics is generally about perception, so how you present it. So some of the guys in the opposition will be speaking to their constituents, will be speaking to the public, and they need to be showing that either they represent a particular school of thought, or perhaps they're angry like most of the citizens of this country, and so
Yes.
believe them. But as I understand, the primary reason for the boycott was because they're tired of Mr. Museveni caring about his life and his family and his grandchildren, giving birth in Germany, and our people are dying in Mulago and Bujiri, and yet he subjects these guys to COVID tests, so that Mr. Museveni is a coward. So that's what most of them say. This guy really fears falling sick, but people fall sick. So apparently the primary thing is that every time you go to these things, they've got to be humiliated by being subjected to COVID tests. That's the primary reason. Looking at that, I thought that, look, legislators sit in a rather squeezed parliament, None of them has, as you can put it, died. Poor Katulu Bama passed on. May so rest in eternal peace. None of them has passed on, as I understand, as a result of COVID. Mr. Museveni just wants to show his power. So there is no reason why these guys don't come. After all, for him, he sits in a very interesting way. These guys are just like that. So, they're like half a kilometer away. Younger men, because his younger guys, sit there. So, so Mr. Museveni can sit, as I understand it, 5 meters.
Yes.
So he could make it 10 meters away from these people and talk to them. But to subject these guys to COVID test, and these things are not free. So these are,
okay.
so some of these things are neither here nor there. So that was actually the primary point. And as I said, these guys sit in parliament themselves, and they're surviving without any issues. The irony, though, is that after a few days, then Mr. Museveni reports that he caught COVID. And so he must say, you see, you guys, I told you, so I'm at risk. But the point is, of course, you survived this thing, man. So many people have survived this thing. So that is the primary reason. I think making political capital, fine. The other thing, of course, is that it's just another routine wasting money and things like that. My problem is that the opposition boycotted. It was sort of covered by the media in a way. But what else after that?
That's the point, because there doesn't seem to be any relevance.
But that's what I'm trying to say to you, that I'm not quite sure that most Ugandans in rural Uganda,
even in the urban ones,
even know that there was a budget, there was a State of the Nation address. Because actually, may I even question it? By the future UPC government, I would abolish it. It's a useless grandstanding thing. You can see we're just giving Mr. Museveni and this NRA thing free advert for nothing. I've got to beg you guys to mention the word UPC. So you see, so State of the Nation address is neither here nor there. Sort of take you back a bit, because this is something that Uganda supposedly just bought from America. It's not a British thing, for example. And of course, most of these countries where the president, you can't talk in parliament, things like that. The most important date, really, in the political calendar of a nation state should be the budget.
Yes.
Budget reading. And even if it were done by the Minister of Finance, rather than even the president, it tells where the state is. And the Minister of Finance and the president, in most democracies, when you're reading budgets, you are reading the thinking of the leader, the president.
Yes.
You are reading the thinking of the party. You are reading the thinking of their strategy. You are reading the thinking of their scholars. You're reading the thinking of the economists, the best of their own. You're reading the thinking of the financial experts.
Yeah, and the direction that
in which case, and therefore the direction where it's going.
Yes.
It's extremely important. But number two, the budget speech will affect you sometimes. The price rise on fuel per day, on that day, budget speech, somebody knows whether or not they're going to get pay rise, or public service rounds, pay rounds, which is something that I will introduce under UPC government for public services, and rounds are standard. People will know that. People will know that, well, taxation is going to affect me like this, or transportation cost is going to be like this, cost of doing business by and large is this. And analysts will come to your program to tell the impact on small businesses, sole traders, big corporations, people who want to invest in the country, a bit of billionaire looters, and people with tax havens. So a budget speech, at the end of the day, if you put the budget paper, that is what it should show.
Yes.
And as you can imagine, that I'll tell you that, well, I'm not an analyst here for this, because you'll have to pay me rather dearly. But that's what it would be, as it were. This one is neither here nor there.
Okay. And I want, honestly, I don't want to, I'm trying to shadow the thought of that the opposition guys are just being a bit simplistic about boycotting some of these things, because it doesn't present any reasonable alternative either way. So it's just a waste of both our time and theirs. But to conclude, I wanted one more thing, and I reserved it for the last, just for the sake. Looking at all of the state of things as they stand, and this is a concluding part, as they stand, and as you give your concluding remarks, what is that unique things you would introduce as the UPC, should you have been presented by similar situations such as this?
Okay, but before I do that, just to say back into the position thing, which is important, I think it's a point that perhaps would omitted. It's extremely important for the political position in this country to begin to do slightly more. Maybe because you guys in the media don't give them sufficient attention, but to do slightly more. I would like up to now to be able to know generally that, particularly after budget speech, I know you talk about the state of the nation,
Yes.
but both, where would this party be? On what particular issue?
Yes.
That's very important for a democracy. And I think for the many young Ugandans who are looking to join political parties, and thankfully many of them have access to UPC. In our case, I'm recruiting, and people are joining UPC in many big numbers. The problem still we have is that many people are concerned that we don't have a clear leadership. So there are those concerns.
Yeah, yeah.
And many people are also concerned that
so
Jimmy, Kena, and Beta Mongi are having special kisses with Mr. Museveni. That I wish them well, and that is also true, but it should not impact on UPC of the future. And then the narrative which you guys in the media have officially always said, oh, UPC is dead, UPC is dead. So many young people who want to join UPC have those concerns, and many of them who overcome those ones join the party. But beyond that, there are other young Ugandans who possibly may not necessarily want to join UPC, but who basically are looking for other alternative political thinking, who need to know what UPC stands for, what DP stands for, what NUPC stands for, what ANT stands for beyond handsome brother Gregory Mugisha Muntu and talk about building structures and organization. Because I'm telling you what people tell me, and for us in UPC, for us, we share with the Ugandans, frankly. I know you guys in other political parties, I know once in a while you should also talk about UPC issues. Me, I talk about you guys, man. So those are important things for the young people of this country, if we are to engage them. So our leaders, the leaders in political parties, need to do more to shout more alternatives than Mr. Museveni. So you are right in a way. But that said, the terrain is so much moved towards Mr. Museveni that people basically simply say, we had enough. Because remember, when budget speeches and State of the Nation address, people no longer listen to those things. Because another day, Museveni will going to abuse somebody, is going to blame everybody else, and is going to come out with figures that don't add up, and is going to tell you about how Pineti is great, and how Lawa is going to be the hospital of the future for everywhere else, kind of stuff. In terms of what UPC would do, I just told you earlier, I think for the moment, what UPC would do, number one, is to kill corruption. We killed corruption and there's no corruption. We would kill corruption. Corruption would give us 10 trillion Uganda shillings per annum. That is official Betty Kamia figure. That's a huge amount of money. UPC prudence in terms of using tax and taxation and fiscal policy and programs would balance our budget to make sure that the 18 trillion so far is neither here nor there. So it would kill that. So deal with the corruption, grow the economy, add value to many of these things, manage efficiency, as I said, and efficiency alone would save huge amount. I told about one person who is possibly allegedly judge. I hope it is not his wife or girlfriend, kind of stuff. Sorts out a whole school. Though they wasted 15 people on one individual, sorts out Nagongara Boys Primary School, the school that made me amongst the best in the country in my year. Young man, do you get it?
I do. I certainly do.
So, no.
So as you conclude,
so purely from efficiency savings, we would do that. But beyond that, as I said, we'd go back to what belongs us. For us, we are an ideologically driven political party. We believe in big government. I would cut proposal for cut spending, but also would cut the size of parliament. I would cut some of the local governments' waste. I would seek to make sure that we take much more some of these monies from legislators. Members of parliament's job is to do oversight rather than carrying my budgets to go ahead and look at leaking iron roofs. That's misallocation of resources. So we'll do that. But anyway, generally, the priority areas for us, which has always been, is education, is health, is agriculture, is infrastructure, is environment, because we have central political party. Yes. I would focus on youth unemployment, and I would also focus on the young girls who these days are struggling, with children having given birth at early stages and nobody's cared for them. Yes. But definitely, I would think Karamoja. Karamoja is in huge family. People are dying in Karamoja, nobody's giving a headline, and people continue to loot Karamoja. Karamoja, there are ancient people are enjoying them while the people who talked about them in prison. I would also make sure that Karamoja is done the way the UPC government did those other days, using local chiefs, to engage in a peaceful, non-violent way to disarm communities, invest more in their education. And a UPC government, a UPC program would kill Karamoja children in the streets of Kampala, meaning would deal with the root causes of bringing them to Kampala in Karamoja, and any other street children, whether they are Karamojong or any, they should be in Reverend Kefa Sempangi's home somewhere, maybe supported by a Ministry of Culture and Community Development, and so therefore they should be in registered homes. And finally, would also kill these people struggling with disabilities, walking and begging in the corners of Kampala. Not only do you legislate them, but you build homes for these people. We have money. Mr. Museveni and his brother, I'm told, and others, they're so wealthy, that half of their breakfast per day can sort out these people. These guys tell us that they do God, and some of them have saved. I'm told that some of them have got churches in their family. What Sundays do they go? Me, I nearly went to the seminary.
As you conclude, sir.
No, my conclusion is that, well, this guy's going for Holy Communion and saying in Jesus' name and Wallah Akbar similar. No, they should examine their conscience. Uganda is bleeding. Uganda is hurting. This country is large enough for us. We have sufficient capacity, sufficient resources to be able to make sure that we look after everybody. Not in the top range, top 5-star, but in a manner in which it's good enough so that the most vulnerable of society should also be sensible and reasonable citizens of this country who benefit really, really for our independence.
Oh, I do not think I have anything useful or sensible to add more than what he has said. I do agree with him on a number of issues, but mostly on the cutting of the administrative spending. I feel like if you look even at our budgets, most of it is, apart from debt reservicing, of course, another one, the biggest, I think almost half of it, of the budget goes to administrative spending, the continuous spending of this is what we pay, salaries, what, a lot of it goes into that. So I think that is actually an issue that we should focus on. So thank you so much. I wasn't able to read your comments because we started so late, and so I thought we should give our guest enough time to do analysis on a number of issues, and he has done us very good service to make sure that he highlights a number of things. Having people like him gives us a foothold into what the future should be like and what is it that we need to do to make sure that the future is actually better than where we are right now. So my name is Roger Suyabo yet again. I thank you so much for being with us for this 2 hours every Monday, and we'll certainly be back next Monday with different issues, looking at what we can do to make this country a better place. And so that is all I have. Have a good night for God and my country.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.